The chandelier above their heads sparkled like this was a celebration, not an ambush. Every chair at the long dining table was filled. Dad at the head, smug in his tailored suit. My uncles, arms crossed like security guards. My aunt, pretending to sip tea while watching me like a hawk. And my cousin Dana? She couldn't even meet my eyes. I walked in slowly, bag over my shoulder, hair tied back, calm as a surgeon. My name is Raina Carter, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever walked into a room where every smile was a weapon and every hug meant war? Dad stood up. Raina, we're so glad you could make it.
Lies.
He wasn't glad. He was greedy. On the table were 3 folders. One already open. Legal papers, inheritance, transfer forms, every clause written to strip me clean of what my mother left me. $2.4 million. Held in a trust. In my name. And they wanted it. All of it. We just want what's fair, Dad said, sliding the papers toward me. You're young. You don't need that kind of pressure. We'll manage it for you. Manage.
Control. Spend.
Erase. He gestured toward the corner. 2 lawyers in suits too polished to blink. They've already drawn up the transfer. All you need to do is sign. I sat down, took one long breath, then smiled. Funny, I said softly, pulling out my phone, because I brought someone too. The room shifted. Faces tightened. Dad's lips curled into confusion. From the hallway came the soft click of heels. Then a woman in black stepped into view. Eyes sharp, briefcase in hand. Good afternoon, she said. My name is Vanessa Grant. I represent Miss Carter. Dad blinked. You brought a lawyer? Vanessa laid out a binder. Actually, I'm not just her lawyer. I'm the executor of her mother's true will. The one that states Raina is to retain full control of the inheritance and be legally shielded from family coercion. My cousin Dana gasped. One uncle stood up. But me? I leaned back in the chair and whispered. You didn't invite me to a meeting. You invited me to a robbery. You just didn't expect I'd show up with the cops. The silence after Vanessa spoke felt like a power outage. No one breathed. No one blinked. Just that sharp, sudden collapse of control. Dad tried first, laughing like this was all a misunderstanding. Raina, honey, we were just trying to help. You've never handled that kind of money before. Your mother knew that. Vanessa didn't flinch. She opened the binder, flipped to a notarized page, and slid it across the table. Correction, she said. Your late wife knew exactly who she was raising, and she made sure your hands would never touch a cent of her daughter's legacy. His face dropped. Panic, poorly hidden beneath smug layers. One uncle leaned over to read it, but Vanessa covered the page. You're not named anywhere. In fact, Ms. Carter's mother specifically added a clause. Should any party attempt to manipulate or pressure my daughter into relinquishing her inheritance, that party will be disqualified from receiving any future estate funds. I looked at Dad, right into his eyes. You invited me here thinking I was stupid. You surrounded me with suits and blood and assumed I'd crack. But I'm not the girl you used to corner in the hallway. I'm the woman Mom raised to finish the game. His voice turned desperate. You don't understand what this money could do for the family. I tilted my head. You mean the family that left me to grieve alone? The family that mocked Mom behind her back, called her a gold digger when she got sick, and disappeared when the hospital bills started stacking? The lawyer on his left tried to speak. Vanessa cut him off. You'll want to stop now, because if you continue, we'll be filing a protective court injunction before the hour is over. And trust me, there are press outlets that love stories like this. That's when my aunt stood up, hands shaking. You're tearing the family apart, Raina. I stood too.
Calm. No.
You tore it apart. I'm just refusing to rebuild it with stolen bricks. And with that, I picked up the folder. Vanessa nodded once. And we walked out, heels clicking like a metronome marking the death of their plan. I didn't raise my voice, didn't throw a scene. But when that door closed behind me, it was the sound of a dynasty collapsing from within. They didn't go quiet. Of course they didn't. When power is all someone knows, They treat boundaries like betrayal. By the time I got home, my phone was vibrating off the table. Voicemails, text messages, emails titled, "Let's be civil. You misunderstood the meeting. Don't do something you'll regret." Regret? I regret giving them the benefit of the doubt. They weren't trying to guide me. They were trying to gut me. Politely, legally, with smiles and contracts they hoped I wouldn't read. But my mother raised me with sharper eyes than they counted on. She left me more than money. She left me armor. That night, I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. I created a new email, BCC'd every family member who sat at that ambush table. Subject: Inheritance misconduct and final statement. Dear family, I am no longer available for manipulation. If any of you attempt to contact me, my lawyer will respond, not me. You are not entitled to what my mother entrusted to me. If you believed silence meant weakness, consider this your correction. We are not at war. We are just no longer in business. I pressed send, closed the laptop, and felt something shift, not just in my body, but in my lineage. Because for generations, women in our family were expected to submit, to hand over, to be grateful for scraps, even when they built the table. But not me, not anymore. The next morning, my aunt posted a vague quote on Facebook, "Money changes people." I smiled, because it does, but not in the way they think. It didn't turn me cold. It turned me clear. I wasn't the traitor. I was the first in a line of women who refused to let love be bought and respect be borrowed. Let them post. Let them sulk. Let them stew in the silence they created. I wasn't climbing their ladder anymore. I was building my own foundation. From truth. From steel. From every time they underestimated me. They didn't just crawl back into silence. They regrouped, like vultures around a different carcass. Only this time, they aimed for something louder, a lawsuit. 3 weeks after I sent that final email, a thick envelope landed on my doorstep. Certified. Stamped. Heavy, like it already knew it was a joke. Inside, a legal petition, filed by my father, with my uncle's signature below, seeking rightful redistribution of inherited funds on the basis of family contribution and verbal agreement with deceased party. Verbal agreement. No proof. No logic. Just desperation dressed in a suit. Vanessa called me before I could even finish reading. She was calm, almost amused. They really thought a court would honor hearsay over a notarized, bulletproof will? I laughed. I guess they missed the days I was too scared to speak. We drafted a response that afternoon. Included bank statements, email records, and copies of Mom's original letter to me. The one she wrote 6 months before she passed. Don't let them take this from you. You earned it when you stood by me. When they vanished, you stayed. This is not a gift. It's what's owed. The letter was written in her hand, dated, witnessed, framed on my bedroom wall, but now part of Exhibit A. The hearing was scheduled. They came in with 3 lawyers. Suits sharp, shoes louder than their arguments. We came in with facts. Silence. Strategy. The judge didn't even need an hour. There is no evidence that the deceased promised or intended for the inheritance to be divided. The court recognizes the validity of the original will. Motion denied. Dad didn't look at me once. My uncle muttered something under his breath. The others just filed out. The way cowards always do when truth doesn't play along. Vanessa packed up the files, handed me the last folder, and smiled. This wasn't just a win, Raina. This was a line in the blood. And they know now. You don't cross it. I walked out of that courtroom, lighter than I had in years. Not because I kept the money, but because I kept my spine. They wanted the courtroom to be my cage. It became my throne instead. The morning after the court hearing, I opened Mom's safety deposit box. I hadn't touched it since the funeral. Not out of fear, but because some grief takes time to grow the hands needed to hold it. The key had been hanging on my dresser mirror for a year, polished from how often I stared at it, hesitated, then walked away.
But now?
Now I was ready. The bank clerk led me to a private room. Metal box. Cold. My mother's handwriting on the outside. For Raina, when they show you who they really are. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a folder, a velvet pouch, and a flash drive labeled Truth. The folder? Letters. Mom had written one to each of them. Dad, my uncles, even Dana. Every page detailed the lies, the abandonment, the quiet cruelty they thought I didn't remember. She wrote it all down.
Dates.
Incidents. Quotes I forgot. But she never did. And in her letter to me, tucked at the bottom, pages folded like a secret hug, she wrote, "Don't fight with noise. Win with light. Let the truth be your sword, but never your shield. You were never meant to hide behind anything." I wept, not because I was hurt, but because I finally understood. She wasn't protecting money. She was protecting me from a legacy of silence. The flash drive held videos. Her voice, soft but steady, explaining each financial decision, backing it all with receipts. A digital armory of truth. And the velvet pouch? A ring. Her ring. The one she wore when she won her first court case against a company that tried to bury her. The one she said made her feel invincible. I slipped it on. It fit like it was waiting. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stood by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on, and whispered, "They thought the inheritance was the treasure. But you were. And now I get to carry you, with clarity, not grief." I didn't need revenge. I had truth. And she made sure it would never die with her. It wasn't over. Because people like them don't retreat. They rebrand. A week after the court loss, I saw the headlines. Local entrepreneur John Carter launches family initiative honoring late wife's legacy. My mother's name, on a website she never approved. Photos of Dad smiling beside donation boxes. His hand on a checkbook he never opened while she was alive. I stared at the screen in disbelief. He'd stolen her face, twisted her story into a PR mask to rebuild his image, as if love could be marketed, as if guilt could be monetized. The headline made her sound like a trophy, not the warrior who raised me in fire. My hands didn't shake. Not anymore. I picked up the phone and called Vanessa. File an injunction.
Today.
Trademark her name if we have to. She's not their puppet. By Friday, his website went offline. By Monday, the nonprofit partners quietly pulled out. He tried to call me. Left a voicemail I'll never forget. "Raina, I didn't mean to disrespect her. I just thought maybe we could start over. Maybe we could do something together in her memory." I saved the message. Not for court, but for reminder. Because even now, after everything, he still didn't understand. He didn't want to honor her.
He wanted to use her one last time.
So I wrote him a letter. The last one he'll ever get from me. Asterisk, you didn't lose the money. You lost the woman who made you feel important. And now you've lost her name too. You can't use what you never earned. Her story will be told, but by me, asterisk. Then I did what he feared most. I launched the Carter Truth Foundation. Not for optics. For real women. Real stories. Real scholarships for daughters who were told to stay small.
To smile. To give.
And every application, every newsletter, bears her real signature. In her handwriting. Because her name doesn't live in their headlines anymore. It lives in impact. And every time they Google her, they'll see me, not broken, not bitter, but exactly who she raised me to be. A woman who knows her worth and guards it like a fortress. It started small. One message. Then 5. Then dozens. From women. From daughters. From strangers who saw the foundation. Read the court case transcript. Heard whispers that someone finally said no. My mom left me a small business. My uncle tried to sell it without asking me. I was told to do the right thing and split my inheritance with my brother. He never even visited mom in the hospital. How did you stay so calm? How did you not burn it all down? I answered them all. Not with legal advice, but with what mom gave me. Permission to stop apologizing for surviving. We started weekly calls. Then monthly workshops. Then a full-blown summit. Daughters of the Line. 100 women. In one room. Not fighting for their stories to be heard, but celebrating the fact that we didn't stay silent. I wore Mom's ring on stage, held her letter in my back pocket, and I told them. They said we changed. But what we really did was return to ourselves. We stopped shrinking for people who only loved us small. They clapped. Some cried. Some just closed their eyes like they were breathing for the first time. And that's when I knew this wasn't about inheritance anymore. It never was. It was about being the first woman in a line of many. To choose self over silence. To refuse the hand-me-down guilt. To say, you don't get to hurt me and still get a seat at my table. That night, I received an email. No subject. Just one line. Mom would be proud. It was from Dana. No reply address. No drama. Just those 5 words. And somehow, they didn't feel like betrayal or manipulation. They felt like truth. Like maybe, just maybe, someone else heard the echo of what we lost. I closed my laptop, looked at the city outside my window, and whispered,
She is.
but so am I. Because I wasn't her shadow anymore. I was her voice.
Clear.
Unbent. Unbought. And every girl who heard me was one less woman they'd ever get to silence. I stood at the edge of the field, a wind stirring through the tall grass, sunlight pouring over the marble like a final blessing. The plaque read, "The Eleanor Carter House, a sanctuary for daughters who chose themselves." Underneath, in smaller letters, were Mom's words etched forever. "They'll call you selfish for saving yourself.
Let them.
Walk anyway." The building had once been a courthouse. Now it was a sanctuary, with beds, legal aid, therapy rooms, and walls painted in soft golds and deep greens. Colors she loved. Colors that said, "You're safe now." I cut the ribbon with the same scissors Mom used to open her first business.
Old. Worn.
Still sharp. The crowd clapped. Not the shallow kind, but the kind that feels like a heartbeat.
Real.
Witnessed.
Alive.
Vanessa stood beside me. She leaned in and said, "You know, this will outlive all of them." And I smiled, because that was the point. I never wanted revenge. Not really. I wanted something they could never understand. A legacy untouched by greed. A name that meant protection. Not power. Not possession. Just peace. That evening, I walked the halls alone. Room to room. Soft voices. Laughter. A girl holding her mother's hand. A woman reviewing a lease she finally got approved for. A teenager writing a poem on a notepad with a pink pen. And I felt it. Mom wasn't gone. She was everywhere. Not in lawsuits. Not in dinner table ambushes. Not in the money they tried to take. She lived in the quiet victory of women who stayed. Who fought. Who walked away and built something sacred with the pieces. As I stood under the archway and watched the sunset, I felt no rage. No hunger for apologies. Only this. They tried to steal her name. So I built a world where her name saves others. That's not revenge. That's justice. That's completion. And with that, I exhaled every version of myself that once begged for love. In rooms designed to drain me, I no longer needed their table. I had built my own kingdom, and every woman inside it was heir to something they could never buy.